Hey everybody, Andrew here from the Zelda Hub. It's been a few weeks since our last episode. The last time I believe I talked to you guys, we had Andy Gibson on, the voice of Impa. Uh, she was a very, very fun gal. We loved having her here. She's a very sweet human being, and we can't thank her enough. Since the last time I talked to you guys, Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity has come out. And it's gotten rave reviews up and down. The reviewers have praised this game except for GameSpot. 60 out of 100? Really, GameSpot? Did Miyamoto steal your girlfriend? Anyways. I've played a lot of the game myself. I'm pretty far into it. And I gotta say, I'm addicted. I've done nothing but play this game for 2 days now. It just absolutely that Dynasty Warriors gameplay, addictive. The cutscenes are absolutely beautiful. The voice acting is terrific. It's definitely. This might be the newness of the game, and I'll come back to this later when I do like a full review. But as of right now, I'm liking this one even better than the first one, and I've got like 400 hours in the original Hyrule Warriors between the Wii U, 3DS, and the Switch. But anyways, we're taking a backtrack here. 2 years ago, in fact, 25 months ago, October, I believe it was 18th, 2018, we had a special guest on the show. His name is Joe Hernandez. But most of you probably know his voice a lot better than his face, as he was the voice of Daruk and Yunobo from Breath of the Wild, and he's back in Age of Calamity. Say hello, Joe.
Hey.
Hey, glad to have you back, man. How's it been going these last couple years?
It's been going good, man. It's been crazy. Just nuts. I've got a 2-year-old that's going to be turning 3. My wife and I are expecting a baby boy any day now at this point, so it's just we're just kind of waiting and seeing what's happening. We're in the middle of COVID. That's happening. Trying to do as much voiceover work as possible, but also not trying to do as much voiceover work as possible because I got a baby coming. So it's crazy, man. It's crazy times.
Crazy times for us all. I know I've changed a lot in the last couple years. I don't even live in the same place I did as before. I live on the other side of the city. I was in the outskirts of Charleston, a place called Marmet here in West Virginia. Little tiny blink if you miss it town. Now I'm back in the city, and I couldn't be happier. I got a big old place down here. It's nice. I've got my own game room full of Zelda stuff, including my Daruk amiibo that I could see actually sitting from where I'm at right now. And it's funny. I moved to the city to be closer to everything. Minor league baseball team literally within walking distance of my house. The mall's right up the street. All kinds of stuff to do down here. Free concerts and everything that go on by the river. And COVID hits and I didn't get none of that.
Yeah, that's the world we're living in right now. I mean, it's insane, man. I mean, you almost feel like a prisoner in your own house a little bit, and it's so bizarre because the times that we're living in right now, like for a pandemic of this nature to hit us the way that it has, you would think that we would be okay, that we would be all right, that we would be, it's like we've got, between Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all, YouTube and all the different streaming services and all the video game services and all the, it is insane. Amazon, you've got everything at your fingertips. It is right there. And yet it also speaks to the sort of human element, where it's like we're still human beings. We still want to have that. They've got to have that interaction, that in-person interaction. So I think it speaks something to the human spirit, and I hope we can bounce back real soon.
It's like we're going on like this is month 9 of this, and just a small interaction like getting to talk to the mailman or running
Yeah.
into a neighbor outside or something like that and talking for like 30 seconds, like it's like my whole day is made. I actually spoke to a
Yeah.
human being, or
Yeah.
or being in a Uber or something like that for 10 minutes. It's just
Yeah.
you don't realize how much you miss people until people are taken away from you, and it's such a it's a hard thing. And I'm one of those rare breed extroverted people that you hear about and only in stories and tales. So it makes it even harder on me because I feed off of people's energy. It's like what gives me energy, and
Yeah.
I like to be around other people so much and talk and like I said, we're social
Just
creatures,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it drains you. Like you nailed it. You got all those
Yeah.
things. The Amazon and Twitch and YouTube and everything at your fingertips, but after a while, it's just like,
Hmm.
man, I just want to go have a drink with my buddies.
Yeah. I want to go out. I want to go, see some people, just give people some hugs, all of that. I just want to go out,
Yeah,
and it's hard.
yeah. It's been a year. Hopefully, with the new regime coming in and things starting to finally change in this country, hopefully we can turn that curb in 2021.
I sure hope
And
so.
oh man, I really do. It's
We got to
and
get
it's
life
so
back to
easy
normal again.
it's so easy to put all of the blame on the president, but he's not the only person in charge. There's a whole group of people up there in the White House,
Yes.
and I don't like any of them. they're all crazy in DC.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're not here to talk about politics. We're here to talk about Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. We've heard the story from you and the other cast members of Breath of the Wild over the years about how you guys came into being into this series. But now we're in a new situation. We're doing a
Mm.
sequel. Well, technically a prequel,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a whole different ball game. So, kind of walk me through the process here, Joe. When you got to the first one, you didn't know what game you were going into. You had no
No.
clue that you were going to
No.
be playing a Goron chieftain in one of the most legendary series of all time. But this time, when they come to you, is it the same story? Are you reading things and not knowing what you're reading for, or are you
Uh,
like, okay, we're doing a sequel and let's do this?
a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Most video games, especially the really big, high-profile ones, AAA games and all that, they're not saying, "Hey, you're auditioning for Hyrule Warriors." They'll use a code name, and it's very commonplace within the industry. It'll be this or it'll be that or London Bridges or Megamax or just whatever just a little blurb. And
Yep.
you as an actor, you kind of realize that that's probably not the working title of it. That's not the official title. And they want to keep it real hush hush, so you just go along with it. And at some point, during the process, you kind of find out what it was. And like I said, with Breath of the Wild, I didn't know what it was. All I knew was it was a Nintendo game, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I looked at that script, and I looked, was there any mention of Hyrule? Was there any mention of Link, Princess Zelda? None of it. They had scrubbed it. And Jamie Mortolaro, the director, would tell you that they made a conscious effort to scrub it and clean it, so that actors like me, didn't, get wind of that and just start tweeting or, blah, 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 telling their friends and all that stuff. So, fast forward to, gosh, I want to say maybe March, April, around that time. This was sort of just right before, as everything was going crazy with the pandemic and all that
Right.
stuff, where I get this audition, and again, it's under a code name, so you don't know. And they were saying, oh, we want it to be like these knights and all this other stuff and fantasy. And it's like, okay, that's fine. And you do it, and you don't know. I mean, you have no idea. They're certainly not letting on. And you just do it. And time passes on, and they said, "Hey, you eventually got that job, that the one that you auditioned for." I was like, "Oh, great, cool." And again, there are so many different, fantasy night, uh, you know, kind of Lord of the Rings-esque video games that are being made. So
Yeah.
again, you don't really, that's not setting off your trigger. And again, at that point, nothing, and I mean nothing, had been announced as far as Hyrule Warriors was concerned. There was and to their credit, to Nintendo's credit, they kept a very, very tight lid on this thing. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's funny, man, because I see some of the little blurbs that pop up on Twitter and online and all that stuff, and people speculate, oh, what about this? What about that? What about, and then all of a sudden, bang, boom, Hyrule Warriors coming out, and it just like it blows everybody's mind because they kept it such a great secret.
And that's rare in these day and age because
So hard.
I run a website, and one of my duties is to report anything and everything that I could find. And rumors are such a strong thing, and there had been zero rumors of another Hyrule Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
We were all looking at Breath of the Wild 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've been looking at. It's still what we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Hopefully in 2021. Fingers crossed. And yeah, we were looking over here. Meanwhile, Nintendo's over on the other side over here. Like, hey, look over here. We got something over here. And we're looking over like, wait, Hyrule Warriors, what? What? Mind blown. Out of left field.
Think about when they announced that. That was what, we're talking about a time
September,
frame
right?
of about 3 months.
It's like early
From
September, early August,
from the time that they
somewhere.
announced it to when it was released.
Yeah, quick.
That's a great job at keeping everything under wraps.
Oh yeah. God knows, how long this had been in development, and
Yeah.
Third parties are also they're also kind of known to kind of go into business for themselves sometimes, and they might tease something without like the higher up saying okay. So to keep everybody quiet on all fronts was great because it's just like we live in the era of no surprises.
It's hard to keep. Let me tell you, man. I mean, it's hard to keep secrets. I mean, with the internet and Twitter and people just, blurbing and blogging and all that stuff, man. I mean, some of this stuff, will find a way out there. And somebody's going to report on it, and like I said, it just speaks to the strength of Nintendo and how well they're good at kind of keeping things close to the chest, and God bless them, man. They do great work.
Oh yeah, Nintendo. They're almost Disney-like in the way that they keep things under wraps. In fact, they might even be better than Disney at it because
in certain respects,
even Disney is kind of like, kind of known to. Disney does things a little differently. They spoil their own for the sake of let's create our own hype.
Yeah,
which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Nintendo very rarely, if ever, does that.
Yeah.
If they do it, it's Smash related.
Yes.
And it's very, very vague.
I agree.
But yeah, I had no idea. I had speculated in my own mind a lot of times with friends and stuff about the possibility of a Hyrule Warriors 2. I thought they would go with another game franchise myself, kind of like they did with Fire Emblem a while back. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe Super Mario Warriors or Donkey Kong Warriors.
Never know.
Xenoblade Warriors. But hey, yeah, you're right. You never know. Something could come up within the next couple of years, and that stuff could come out.
Yeah.
Maybe they could get Joe Hernandez to do the voice of Waluigi.
Oh God, that would be so much fun.
Wow.
Charles Martinet's got that under lock, though.
Charles Martinet, what a
he's
treasure.
a great guy, man. He's a great guy. I met him at a con 2 years ago. We were in Salt Lake, and we were both doing a con together, and it was just crazy, man. I go up and talk to him, and he's just a. I mean, you could not have a nicer human being to talk to and to interact with, and I had seen him at other things before, but this was kind of the first time where I really got a chance to just talk, say hi, and we ended up getting drinks later on. He came over to, hotel, and we had drinks with some of the other voice actors that were there at the con, and just it was just, oh God, it's great, man. He had told me something very interesting. And I'd mentioned this on another interview, but it has to be reset again and again and again. He makes a very conscious effort in the roles that he takes, in that he wants to do as many family friendly type roles as he can. I think he made the decision a long time ago, and one of the things he had said is like, I don't want to do anything that has too much sex, too much violence, too much gore. Right. He didn't want that to sort of overshadow the image that people have in their minds about his work as Mario, and I respect that to the nth degree, man.
Oh yeah, that's being truthful to your craft right there.
Absolutely.
And that's rare in these day and age for somebody.
Yeah.
Because it'd be very easy for him to take, a big paycheck from, let's say, Xbox and say, hey, let's do this adult-rated game, and you're playing, this psycho killer. It'd be very easy. But, the fact that he's committed to being this almost role model-esque, anybody in voice acting knows who Charles Martinet is.
And
anybody who plays video games knows who he is.
It's an extension of the character. It's an extension of the brand, what it symbolizes, I guess. And like I said, I admire that so much, man.
Speaking of great guys, you mentioned him a few moments ago, Jamie Mortolaro.
Yes.
We had him on a few months ago, and absolutely a beautiful human being.
He is.
Inside and out. Jamie is great. He was kind of the guy. What was his official title? He was the producer, right?
Well, on Breath of the Wild, he was the director. He did the casting. They had him, and at a certain point, they had him do Sidon. He was very uncertain about doing Sidon. Just like, I don't really do voice acting. That's not really my thing. And I guess for whatever reason, they couldn't find someone that could bring out those qualities that they had. And I guess he would just kind of like, no, but it's got to be like this, and he's got to sound like this, and he's encouraging, and and at a certain point, I guess the people from Nintendo just said, why don't you do it?
That's him.
Yeah, and he knocked it out of the park, man. So I can't envision anybody else doing that voice but him. And to his credit, man, I think the fans have they've fallen in love with Sidon. So he is very popular. Yeah,
I mean, he made it to late night talk show television.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember who. If it was, I don't know if it was Conan or Jimmy Kimmel. One of them. It was a joke about how everybody was kind of thirsting after the Shark Man.
Okay.
It was something like that. It was a joke. But yeah, I remember like one of the late night talk show hosts. Gosh, I can't believe it's almost been 4 years since that.
Yeah.
4 years since Breath of the Wild. Gee whiz. It'll be 4 years coming March. Wow.
Yeah.
But in the short time I got to talk to Jamie, and we talked a lot both before and after that interview. We probably spent close to 2 hours talking.
Wow.
And he absolutely is just the most genuine person. It's like he literally is Sidon. He's so positive, and he makes you feel so good about yourself. Mm-hmm. You feel like $1,000,000 after you've talked to him.
He's very intuitive too, man. I mean, working with him, and I've worked with Jamie on several projects before and since. I know what I'm going to get when I work with him, and Jamie is so tuned in to what is going on with the scripts and the characters and the relationships and the stakes that are being had. I've worked with him. I'll give you an example. I worked with him on Final Fantasy Mobius, which is a mobile Final Fantasy game.
Right.
And I would go in and we would work, and he knows the lore and the character arcs and the stories and all that stuff. He knows the ins and outs of that. Like, oh my God, it's ridiculous. And he's like explaining and breaking it down. So for me as an actor that's in the booth, like, oh my gosh, because a lot of the times you don't get the script ahead of time. So to have that context of the who, what, when, where, why, how, as far as what we're doing, the moments that we're living and breathing in this scenario. Oh my gosh, that's priceless.
Oh yeah.
And like I said, Jamie's just so in tune with what's going on.
He really is. He and people don't realize, if you guys haven't listened to that episode of the Zelda Hub podcast, Jamie's done work in the video game industry and voice acting industry and stuff for years. He worked on the old Nintendo commercials from back the N64, the get in or get out, that old campaign. That was him doing a lot of those. He worked on old Mario commercials for like Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
And he
look at his resume, man. Look at the video games that he has directed just in the past, 5 or 6 years, man. I mean, it speaks for itself. It really does.
He's honestly one of those guys. One day, it may not be anytime soon, but one day, because Jamie has a lot more to give to the industry, in my personal opinion. But one day, we're gonna be watching the Video Games Award, and they're gonna be handing that guy a Lifetime Achievement Award.
They should.
Yeah,
they should.
They
literally
should.
They should give him. They should give him the award right now. Actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
To heck with waiting, 10, 20, 30 years or whatever. Give him the award right now, because as far as I'm concerned, he deserves it.
Yeah, lots of praise for Jamie. So you get to come back in Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah, coming back to that real quick, it was crazy because, like I said, they had a code name, so I didn't know what was going on. And then, so I'm prepared to work on just generic fantasy, title.
Right.
That was my preparation. I was like, okay, and we'll work on it. We'll do all this other stuff. And meanwhile, COVID is happening too. So it's like, oh gosh, and for those of you that don't know, as far as the voiceover community is concerned, going into a studio, especially at the early days of COVID, was just like all the studios were shutting down. Like, hey, we can't operate, we can't do this. So the voice actor, the voice acting side of things, the actor side of it all, we were home sort of beefing up our home studio booths. So if that meant, getting a better microphone, getting a better interface, getting a better computer, getting a better, whatever, we're racing because first of all, we gotta stay competitive. We gotta make sure that we're able to work at home remotely. Because if the studios are out, well, then we need to make sure that we have, a viable option here at home, which, pre-COVID, I think I would still work from home. I would still have sessions from home. But obviously now in the age of COVID, like all of my work is done from home.
Yeah.
So again, you kind of have to change, and you're changing things on the fly. And it was almost like an arms race, because all the good tech was like starting to sell out. Like, oh my gosh, that new monitor, that new that microphone that everybody needs, or that interface that everybody needs, or that piece, or that so it was like everybody was buying up stuff. And that's one of the beautiful things about what we do is there's a lot of stuff that is available online, whether like Guitar Center or Sweetwater or Amazon. Like you are able to sort of assemble your own voiceover booth. It's very, very much possible in this day and age, as opposed to like say 20 or 30 years ago, where it's like we didn't have access to it. And that also speaks to the ability to do voiceover, because now You don't have to necessarily be in LA to do it. You can be in Topeka, Kansas. You can be in Wichita. You can be in Sheboygan. You could be wherever. And as long as you have a pretty good setup, good insulation, good internet, and the skills to do it, you can compete. And so, just me and so many other voice actors were just beefing up our rigs and our stuff. And, fast forward to, I want to say it was like June or July that they said, hey, that thing that you wanted, that game, we're ready to record, but we're not going to be able to do it in the studio. If you have a home studio, we'll work with you that way. I was like, okay, cool. And by the way, that thing that you're working on, it's Dynasty, or it's Hyrule Warriors. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, it's Hyrule Warriors. I was like, what? So I was immediately just filled with so much joy. I was just blown away because I love this world. I love these characters. Yeah. And I will voice Daruk 1,000 times if they will let me. And so getting a chance to come back to this franchise meant a lot. It meant the world to me. And getting to come back, it was almost like riding a bike, because you're doing it and you're revisiting the character, and you've lived and played in this world previously 4 years ago, and you're getting a chance to come back and just, you do voice and you're playing it, and there are little flashbacks in my mind of some of those first sessions from Breath of the Wild, and I could hear Jamie's voice in my head. I was like, oh, do it like this, and it was just great to be able to just come in and do it. And it was a very kind of cathartic experience, like I said, because we're recording from home, and we're recording during the pandemic. Most voice actors, their booths aren't anything too elaborate. It's nothing too crazy. I have a walk-in closet that I converted, and I've got the soundproof foam. I'm in it right now, so this is it. But most studios you go to are very, they're professionally done, top of the line. The important thing that will separate a voice actor's booth from one in the studio is air conditioning. Let me say that again. Air conditioning. I do not have air conditioning in my booth, which normally isn't. And normally that's fine. I don't got any air circulating here. So when I record, I'm just recording, and you do auditions and you do a little stuff here and there, and 20, 30 minutes, you're fine, right? Yeah. We did. I can't even tell you how many days and how many 4-hour sessions we would do in here.
Oh boy.
And mind you, I said, what did I say? July, June, around that time, when it's starting to heat up, and we're working in the middle of the day.
And keep in mind, everybody, this man lives in California. This isn't like Omaha or Montana or West Virginia. This man's in California.
Yep. So it got real hot, real humid, real fast, man. And again, you tough it out, you do it because this is something that you want to do, and this is the job, and this is like
paying your dues.
It's not just the job, but I mean, this is like one of those things that you just feast on, because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a chance to, bring this character back, and so you want to do the best possible work that you possibly can, and the deck is stacked against you a little bit, in that it's like, oh gosh, I'm having to deal with this stuff. So not to get too graphic or anything like that, but I had to shed some articles of clothing at times. It was that bad. And it was a little cathartic because here I am, I'm voicing Daruk, and I'm down in my little skivvies. And if you notice, Daruk's got his little
loincloth,
whatever you want to call it, And I'm looking at him on the cut scenes, and I'm looking at me, and it's like we're in pretty much the same.
Hey, you're part of the tribe now.
A little bit. So we got.
It's like in Breath of the Wild, you took the heat test like Link did.
Yep. Yeah. Got a little method with it, but again, You suck it up and you do it because you love it, man.
Oh yes, and I remember when we first saw the trailer, and I'm hearing all these familiar voices, and I know how embargoes work. I know how that whole mess, that whole situation is, and I'm like, man, I know I really want to talk to all of these because, through all of this, I've developed friendships with some of you guys. Like I talk to you, pretty regularly. In fact, this guy right here, stand up dude, we're both baseball fans on opposite ends of the country. I have to tell
Yeah.
this story. I'm a Braves fan, being from the South. I grew up watching them on TBS back in the 80s and 90s. Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Chipper Jones. My blood is red and blue for the Braves till the day I die. And this guy, being over in California, huge Dodgers fan. Clayton Kershaw, Oral Hershiser, Kirk Gibson, Mike Piazza. Many greats have come across there over the years, and I'm sure you cheered for them all. And we were in the National League Championship Series against each other, the Dodgers and the Braves, just like back in the day. And my team was up 3-1. 3-1, and it was like a foregone conclusion. Yeah, the Braves are going to the World Series, first time since 1995. And I'm riding high, I'm feeling good, and I can remember me and him messaging each other on Twitter, Facebook, whatever social media platform we were on. And he was so upset, and I was like, man, Dodgers are a great team. I was like, being the good guy, buddy fan. And then all of a sudden, here come the Dodgers out of nowhere, taking all the games. And we're in Game 7, and both of us are like a nervous wreck at this point. And the Dodgers end up, the Braves take an early lead in that game, and I'm like, man, your team has just put up one hell of a fight. It's been great. I'm confident the Braves are going to win, and all of a sudden they lose. And he was the first person who messaged me. None of the Braves fans, because they were too busy crying like I was. This Dodger fan, that I made friends with 2 years ago doing this silly podcast, he was like, man, you all right? And I'm like, man, that's a good friend right there, And, I've made friends with you. I talk to Amelia here and there. She's a very sweet girl. That's Mifa. And I talk to a couple of the other ones here and there. I interact with Andy sometimes on Instagram. She's a sweetheart. All of you all are really, really great people. And, this podcast would not be what it is without any of you guys. 2 years ago, we started off with Elizabeth Maxwell, that's Urbosa, and then a week later, we had Joe on. So it started off with these two, and it kind of built from there. We've had everybody from Breath of the Wild on it so far,
Wow.
except for one guy. He's eluded me. That's
Oh.
Bill Rogers.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Really?
I've tweeted him a few times. He on Twitter. I've sent him a couple DMs on Instagram. Can't seem to get him the message back.
Now, to be fair, and I'm not going to make excuses for Bill. I'm not very active on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, but I don't regularly check my stuff. So
I don't either.
it could be the platform. Maybe try Facebook, maybe try Twitter, something you might have a little bit more luck. Bill, usually he's pretty good about stuff like that, and I love Bill. He's one of my favorite people. Real quick story about Bill. When we were working on Breath, as I would leave the studio, I would see Elizabeth sometimes. I would bump into Elizabeth. Hey, how's it going? Or I'd see Patricia, or I'd see Amelia. And, I was like, oh, gosh, I'm hearing some of the stuff that you're doing, when we're all in the same cutscenes. I was like, I loved your work. You sounded great. So, getting a chance to. I never saw Bill.
Really?
I never saw Bill. And I guess maybe we just didn't have any cutscenes together, or our schedules were such that we never bumped into each other at the studio when we were recording. And like I said, I've known Bill since he came out here to LA 5-6 years ago, maybe. I don't know how long it's been. But I've known Bill personally as a friend. He's been over to my house. We've hung out. We've had drink. I love Bill.
Awesome.
And so it was one of those things where he knew he was in the game. I didn't know he was in the game. And we both, but we never talked about it. And I think that speaks to the strength of the NDA. where it's like, hey, there's honor amongst thieves. You got to keep a tight lid. Like I said before, you don't want to let anything get out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I think literally 3 days before the game came out where Jamie did like a little email blast, like, hey guys, just looking forward to, the game coming out. It's finally here, all of our hard work, and, just I'm looking forward to it. And it's like, oh gosh, thank God, great. This is happening. And I see Patricia's name on the email thread. I see Andy. I see, Amelia. I see everybody. And I see Bill. I see Bill's name on it. I was like, wait a second. You're in? Like, and so we kind of had this moment where it's like, what? Like, and it was great. It was just this great, moment amongst friends. So, yeah, I'll have to send it. Yeah, I'll have to hit him up.
Yeah, I definitely want to get him on. He will complete the Breath of the Wild package. We gotta have the king. We gotta have the King of Hyrule. And I've always said, and I was just actually talking about this a few weeks ago with friends. If I ever did cosplay, there's one cosplay I really want to do, and it's the King of Hyrule, because I'm kind of built like that. I'm a big burly guy. I'm kind of built like a Goron, actually. And yeah, I'm like, man, I could totally pull that look off. I totally could. I got a big nose. I kind of wear my hair a little long. I could dye it white. I could totally do it. Oh yeah, I love the King of Hyrule. He's such a strong character too.
He is.
I like his voice a lot.
Yeah.
People may not really think about this much. He was the first voice we hear in our journey. I mean, we hear Zelda at the beginning, but he's like the first human being we come in contact with once we leave the Shrine of Resurrection, and he kind of gets us going. And I thought it was really cool how they did this. Now, I've not completed the whole game, and I don't know how it's going to finish. So, minor spoilers here for anybody who wants to skip ahead. I'm sure my editor will put in, times and stuff as she does
alert.
this. Spoiler alert flashing on the screen. King of Hyrule narrates the game. Bill's the narrator. And I think that's really cool because he has the perfect voice for narration.
Yeah.
I love the interactions that everybody has. It's like we see whole new interactions. Like we have a cutscene with Daruk and Mipha discussing training, and I'm like, man. And I'm sitting there. I remember seeing that. I saw that cutscene yesterday, and I'm like, man, no, I want a Daruk and Mipha like side game because they're totally opposite. Like he's this big Hulk,
yeah,
and she's this little teeny tiny princess.
Yeah.
And they're totally different personalities, and I'm like,
yeah,
man, I can just feel the chemistry here. This is great. They would make their own game and like have the Daruk Mipha the quest. That would be so cool. I like that. Yeah, that's the great thing about Hyrule Warriors. We're seeing interactions that we didn't get to see in Breath of the Wild because everybody was in their own spot.
Yeah.
For most of the game. I mean, there was a couple cutscenes where everybody was together. But now everybody's together through pretty much the whole thing. It's like you're seeing Rivali interact with everybody in ways. And Sean Chiplock, that's the one guy we haven't talked about yet. Mm-hmm. What a ball of energy he is.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh. I wish I had what he had. I mean,
too.
As far as, just, how crazy he is.
I can't keep up with him.
But you touched on something real quick. Making the jump from Breath to Hyrule, I feel like we were able to flesh out these characters more. And you saw some of it in the DLC, in the Champions Ballad. And so, the cutscenes in Breath of the Wild were the cutscenes, and the work that we did and the cinematics were, I loved it. And I loved the sort of progression that we've made between the DLC and now with Hyrule Warriors, where I feel like we're just able to further explore these characters and really, really flesh them out. And to me, that was always something that really appealed to me.
I've heard it said from a lot of people in our Facebook group, which you're a part of.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said that the story in this game is the story they wanted in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild wasn't huge. despite it being the first Zelda game with voice acting, ironically, was not a very story-driven game. It was more of a gameplay-oriented game, which you could go and uncover these cutscenes at your own leisure, and kind of just choose to do that whether you wanted to or not. Where I personally, I remember saying this to, I think it was Patricia in our last interview, that Skyward Sword came out back in 2010, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the game they should have introduced voice acting in, because it's the most cinematic Zelda game. I don't know if you've ever played it or not.
Well, and I'll say this, because when you look at the trajectory of video games just over the past 20 years or so, the video games have taken on a cinematic approach. I mean, the lines between video games and big budget Hollywood films have become so blurred.
Look at The Last of Us.
Absolutely, man. I mean, and these characters are very well thought out, well developed, well fleshed out, and there are moments that are there to sort of pull at your heartstrings, and it's not just about the gameplay, it's also about the emotional investment that you have in these characters. With Nintendo and respects to voice acting, I feel like they've always been very, very protective of their properties, and rightfully so.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to have Mario do something that is very outside of that Mario bubble, I guess I should say, or he wouldn't say so. But you get what I'm saying?
I'm remembering a movie from 1995 that would like to have a talk with you, sir.
But I lesson learned, though. Lesson learned. Where I think now, they're very protective of it, and so.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to voice acting, and especially with Breath of the Wild, I feel like they sort of dipped their toe into that pool.
Yeah, it was definitely because this is something I like to bring up. I've talked with a couple of the others about this as well, and I want to talk about it with you. Nintendo had a lot of bad experiences with voice acting before Breath of the Wild. One that I like to bring up is Super Mario Sunshine. Mm-hmm. Back, did you ever play that one?
I didn't. I did not.
It had some voice acting in it, and it wasn't great. It wasn't well received. The lines were really bad, and I hate to say that because I've wrote a little bit in my life, and I don't like to criticize people.
Was it the way that it was written, or was it the way that it was delivered? I guess I should say.
Yes, both.
Okay.
It was all just nobody. It's one of those things. It's so bad it's become memes over the years.
Okay.
Like there's this one line where Bowser Jr. he's caught Princess Peach, and Bowser has brainwashed Jr. into thinking Princess Peach is his mother. And you'd think Princess Peach would be like, "What are you talking about? No, I'm not." And she's like, "I'm your mama?" It's like, that's not the reaction you have. A woman knows if she's someone's mama.
Yeah. So to speak to that, and again, I don't know what it was like for Super Mario Sunshine, and I'm speaking on a very broad sense and a broad just that's my outlook on this, and voice acting is something that I think is being taken more and more seriously, and has only really been taken seriously the past 10 maybe 15 years or so. I mean, the first big game that really integrated voiceover and did it successfully, I would say, would probably be Metal Gear Solid.
Agreed.
But prior to that, voiceover was kind of just an afterthought.
I mean, look at the CDI games, the Zelda CDI games. Those were people that they hired, hey, let's get Jim from accounting to voice this character.
You pulled the words out of my mouth. It was just, hey, we need somebody, hey, can we get the secretary to do it? Can we get, the guy that's in marketing, we need somebody. Just, hey, you kind of fit the description. Hey, let's just, and it wasn't just Nintendo. I mean, everybody did that.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody did that back in the day. And so now we are starting to see where it is becoming very, very well thought out. Well, it's specialized. It is taken seriously and with a great deal of respect that it rightfully deserves. And a lot of that is because the gamers, have demanded it.
Oh yeah.
It's they'll tell you right away, man, if they don't like something, if something doesn't jive. And it starts with the writing. You got to have really good writing, and you got to have
Oh
great
yeah.
casting, and you've got to have great direction and performance. I mean, those are the things that do it. And it's only, like I said, been the past 10 or 15 years that this is something that is like taken seriously. Before it was just, like I said, an afterthought.
And like with Nintendo, a lot of the times, like the most when you got voice acting, it was very generic. It'd be
Yeah,
like, Link going, yeah, yeah, ah, yeah, yeah, or
yeah,
Mario going, let's go. It's just little tiny, little
little,
quotes, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
then it kind of, oddly enough, the voice acting thing started with the first Hyrule Warriors. They kind of pulled a little surprise on us, and they had a narrator, and that's something we hadn't, in the Zelda community alone. I'm not talking about other franchises, just our little bubble here. That was a huge first step, and I can remember a lot of the reactions to that. It's like, oh, this is a nice change of format. This is something new. I like this, and that kind of got the conversation going with the
yeah,
Zelda fans on a fully verbalized Zelda game.
yeah.
Like, would this work? Because Zelda is not quite like other video games. For one, you have a silent protagonist,
Yes.
and that's very that can
Uncommon.
either work really well
Yeah.
or it can bomb.
Yeah.
And I think having voice acting works perfectly with the silent protagonist because everybody around him, Daruk, Urbosa, Mifa, Rivali, Teba, and all of these other characters kind of give you the reactions. They give you the personality, and you can see Link pull from each of them.
So you mentioned something. You kind of touched upon something as far as the protagonist not really being terribly vocal. And you had mentioned Sean Shiplock earlier. He said something that really, I mean, it sticks out in my mind even to this day, where he used Mad Max Fury Road as an example, where Mad Max is the protagonist, but the supporting cast around him also drives the film.
Yeah.
And more to your point, Mad Max, gosh, I don't know how many lines of dialogue that he actually has in the film. I could probably count them on both hands.
Probably, yeah.
But I mean, you want to talk about a silent protagonist, and it's a great, great, great film. So that is one of those instances where yes, it definitely works.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, having everybody around him bounce. They basically like they all bounce off of Link,
Yeah,
and he expresses himself in facial expressions, body language, things he does. Um, I love this one scene. Once again, spoilers. I love this one cut scene where they had just come back from adventure, and Zelda's like, she's in that stage of trying to find out who she is, and Urbosa, being the motherly character she is teaching her a lesson, be like, look, you may become more powerful, but at the end of the day, you're still you. Look at Link. And they all just look over at Link, and he's over here with Daruk and a couple of guards eating rocks.
yeah.
What? Link eats
I
rocks?
love that moment.
What? Okay,
I love
good to
that.
know. What are we doing here? Link's a
Yeah.
rock eater.
Yeah.
And I love that. I like
Yeah.
Link didn't say a word, but he did the funniest thing in the entire game.
Yeah. The moments of levity in this game, I mean, it had me cracking up, man. I mean, I unfortunately I didn't get a chance to see all the cutscenes, but I only kind of saw the ones that Daruk is involved in. So, that's as far as my knowledge. But that was definitely one of those moments where, I'm in the booth working with them, and you kind of just have to stop and have a moment and just have a nice laugh because of how silly it is. But yeah, it was great. It's beautiful.
I love you talked about the characters being more fleshed out, and I have noticed that Urbosa is one of my favorite characters. I love her.
Agreed.
I've always liked characters like that. She reminds me a lot of Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And I've always liked the mother-daughter connection between her and Zelda. I think it's very sweet. I like how she calls Zelda her little bird. I think that's really cute. And it reminds me a lot of the relationship that my aunt had with her daughter. Because my aunt was a strong, very, very strong woman, very proud woman, and, her daughter, was kind of a little bit the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of remind me a lot of that, and I get to see more of that type of mother. Even though Urbosa's not really Zelda's mom, Zelda's mom and dad, Urbosa's been like the surrogate mother, kind of giving Zelda advice and being there for her. And I think that's really cute because Zelda in previous games had always been this strong princess. You think of Twilight Princess Zelda, she's, someone who laid down her weapons so that her whole country could continue to exist. Mm-hmm. She's been that type of character for so years, and then we get to this Zelda, and she's completely something else. She's insecure. She shows jealousy.
Yeah.
She's a lot more relatable. It's like, I can relate to this Zelda. She has some of the same problems that I had when I was a kid. And I like that Nintendo finally started making more characters like that.
What it is it shows some vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that also speaks to Patricia's performance as well.
And you actually segued that perfectly into what I want to get into. Patricia, and we talked about this in our conversation as well, more than any of the voice actors in this game, in these two games, has probably because she's the titular character, probably has the more criticism thrown at her. And we talked a lot about it. And she's very professional. She is absolutely an amazing person. Very talented. I like her role as Zelda. I think she nailed it.
I love her.
And I think in this one, I think she's even better because she gets to show hey, she can lead an army. She can do this. She can do that. She's just not this kind of depressed little sad princess that runs around Hyrule with Link. Mm-hmm. She's a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I remember when Breath of the Wild was new, a lot of people were put off by the British accent. And I'm confused as to why, because The Legend of Zelda is while it's not medieval, it's that type of fantasy setting.
Yes.
Just swords and shields and orcs and elves, kind of like Lord of the Rings type setting. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the default, British is the default accent that they use in all of those.
I distinctly remember, hearing some of her cutscenes in some of those early sessions that I had. And like I had said earlier, I would go, I'd be leaving the studio and somebody else would be coming in. So I remember getting a chance to meet Patricia for the first time. And, I just said I loved her work. And it reminded me very much like Cate Blanchett. Mm. It had this just beautiful, timeless, ethereal quality to it. And like I said, there was also that vulnerability mixed in. And I went back and I played the game at the beginning of the quarantine.
You're talking about Breath of the Wild, right?
Breath of the Wild, yeah. And just some of those early, that first moment, when you start the game up and you hear her voice, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I don't understand any.
Voice, yes.
Yeah, I don't understand any sort of criticism thrown at her. I really don't.
What I compare it to is like everybody comes into anything when something gets announced, instantly people start to build their own expectations.
Yeah, and
I
those.
do it, you do it, everybody does this. But the problem with a lot of people is they build their expectation up too high. Look at the Star Wars movies. This is probably the best comparison I can make with the sequel trilogy that we had here in the last few years. Everybody had their own expectations, whether it was because of what would have been written in novels, in the Star Wars expanded universe, or whatever. That they had this belief that this is what Luke should be. This is what Leia should be. Or what this character should be. And it's kind of the same. Zelda's been around since 1984 or 85 or whatever it came out. And everybody's got this expectation of what Princess Zelda or Link or whomever should be. And the word should, ironically, should never be a thing when it comes to stuff like this, because you don't know what's going to come up in a story. You don't know what they're going to create. And like with Star Wars, everybody had this expectation that Luke should be this overpowered, save everybody every time anything bad happens kind of character. And that's not what they did in the new trilogy. He was kind of like, he kind of was more like Yoda was in the originals. He was he had outcast himself and then became a teacher. And I thought that made million times more sense than him as a 70-year-old man jumping in the fray and saying, hey, I'm going to kick all the bad guys' butts and save the day. No, that would suck. I think that would be worse than what they did with him. And, a lot of people didn't like that, and they crapped all over the movies as a result. And there we go, and it's like here we are with Zelda. It's like everybody's got this ill-conceived notion of what she should be. Not what Nintendo thinks she should be, or what the person portraying them is trying to make them be, but what they selfishly should think she is. And then here we are, it's 2017, this game's out, and everybody's like, well, she shouldn't have this accent, or she shouldn't have said it like that, and it's like, what?
And to her credit, she has taken everything, and I mean the good, the bad, both, in stride. She really has. Where very similar to sort of Charles Martinet that we were talking about earlier, where she has sort of taken this mantle and she has run with it. And you could not find a better ambassador for the character than her.
Right. Agree. She handles it so well. I remember I asked her, I said, Patricia, how do you deal with this? How do you go on social media? How do you go on Facebook and Twitter and see what could be described as hurtful things sometimes? And she said, at first I let it get to me, I let it bother me, but I didn't express that on the inside. I'm like, this is hurt. But as more and more goes along, and she sees the good side of things, she interacts with people at conventions, and talks to people online that absolutely love her, and she's like, you know what? This side is so much better than that dark side, and I'm not going to let that dark side get to me. And
I have seen it with my own two eyes. Just as far as I've seen little girls, I've seen full-grown adults approach her, and dressed in full-on Zelda cosplay, and she has embraced them. I've seen her share these beautiful, loving moments that you would expect someone that personifies this character to do that, and it's just remarkable. And the amount of pressure that she has probably been under, you could actually argue that it's probably a little unfair.
Yeah.
But she has just taken it. She has embraced it. She has ran away with it. And I am just in constant awe of how well she has dealt with it.
I could.
I'm just in awe. I really am. Oh, yeah, I agree. And it's like I said, it's almost a little unfair to take this character that has all of this history, all of this lore, and thrust them into this position. And like I said, she has done it in stride. I've seen her sign autographs, and she's done it in Hylian, which is remarkable. She
learned the whole language.
Just beautiful, 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 beautiful. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen her just go up and gives hugs and just embrace the fans. It's beautiful to watch.
Side note, she's also a tremendously talented singer.
She is.
I don't know if any of you out there listening have ever heard any of her music, but she does have a YouTube channel. I'll post a link of it in the description of this video. That way you can go check it out. And she's very multi-talented. She's a singer. She's a dancer. She does acting on stage. She's just a 5-star talent, and we're very lucky to have someone like that in the Legend of Zelda community. And she's also in that Facebook group, and every once in a while she'll pop up in there. And, that's what I like about this community. There's no hierarchy.
No.
We've interacted, and when I say we, I'm talking about here at the Hub. We've interacted everybody from voice actors to video game designers and people that worked with Nintendo in the past, and all of them just salt of the earth, good people, nobody looking down on anybody, and that's so rare to find in any type of fandom,
Yeah.
And it's you look over at I like to bring up Star Wars a lot because I'm a Star Wars nerd, and it's very easy to compare. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Edit that out. Star Wars, you go to a Star Wars convention and there's like thousands of people. And yes, the actors are there. John Williams could be there doing a song. Mark Hamill and, I keep wanting to name people that are no longer alive by habit. Mark Hamill.
Billy D. Williams.
That's a good one. Billy D. Williams.
Real quick, I went to a convention, probably about 10 years ago, man. And I was getting an autograph by Stan Lee, which I have and I will carry with me to the end of my days.
A little bit jealous of that one.
I'm probably going to be buried with those comic books, like the pharaohs of old. I have made it very clear that I want those comic books to go with me into the afterlife. But Billy D. Williams was there. And let me tell you, man, he is every bit as charismatic as you would think he would be.
I love
and
him.
For a man his age, I mean, he just oozes charisma. I mean, charming as the day is long. So, it's not a front. It's not a facade. It's not, he is the real deal, man.
Lando was always a favorite.
Absolutely.
I love Lando. Yeah, Billy D. Williams never gets enough credit for those movies, man. Everybody focuses on Hamill, Ford, Fisher, and for good reason. They're all terrific. But I've always said Billy D. Williams is the most underrated person in that entire series.
Yeah.
I love Lando. How do you not like the Pimp Daddy of the future? Come on, the man wears a cape like it's a tuxedo. Who could pull that off but Billy D. Williams? Nobody.
Capes
That's
are hard to pull off. Let me tell you, man.
Not everybody just casually wears a cape.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love. But back to what I was saying. You've got all these big actors on the stage, and you're down here in the audience, but there's also a disconnect because you're not going to have lunch with Mark Hamill unless you win some like big prize or something, But there's a lot better chance that you can have lunch with somebody who worked on a Zelda game. I can remember a friend of mine went to a con. I can't not remember one. Might have been Con Bravo. I'll have to ask him and see which one it was. He ran into what is the guy's name? He was one of the Bill works for Nintendo. He's in the Nintendo Directs, and his last name's not coming to mind. Mm-hmm. Bill.
All I know is Bowser. That's
Doug Bowser. Yeah. It's an easy one to remember. And Reggie, of course.
Well, it's funny. Somebody asked me on Twitter a while back ago, like, "Hey, have you ever met Reggie? Like, because they think that because I'm a voice actor and I was in Breath of the Wild, that Reggie would invite me to Seattle and we would go have lunch or something. That's not the case. And I said I shared the same space with Reggie once when I went to the Video Game Awards. It was me, Patricia, and Elizabeth Maxwell. We went to the Video Game Awards in 2017, and that's when Zelda won Game of the Year.
Yeah.
But Reggie was up on stage.
Okay.
I was in the seats
Counts.
several rows back.
Counts.
So that is as close as I have been to Reggie.
I'd be like, yeah, that counts. I'm taking it. I was in the same breathing space as Reggie fills in me. Bill Trennan. He does a lot of the North American translation stuff, and he's probably best known as the guy who did all the Nindy stuff, the indie games on Nintendo Directs for a long time.
Okay.
He ran into Bill at this con. Nintendo was there doing something, and he actually was like, "Hey, Bill, a couple of us are going to go get something to eat. Want to come with?" And it was meant to be a joke. Bill came with.
That's cool.
I'm like, that's what I like about Nintendo.
Yeah.
Is they just put themselves out there for everybody. From the person at the bottom to the person at the top. I've heard similar stories told over the years about Reggie being absolutely just amazing with people. And just, it's probably a lot different with the people from Japan like Miyamoto and Aonuma, because they've got to get over here and then back over there, so they probably don't get a lot of time. But everybody from Nintendo of America is just amazing.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I'm glad you're part of it, Joe. You're a great guy.
And in my firsthand experience with everybody from Nintendo, I would back that up. In working with the people from Nintendo, the localization people, the script writers, the producers, and all that stuff, between Breath of the Wild and the DLC and now Hyrule, they've changed. It's not as if they keep one team on. Right. They'll interchange pieces. And that's just the nature of the business. But across the board, whenever I've interacted with anybody from Nintendo, they have been just the best. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to end with a couple questions here. Quick questions.
Sure.
Now that you've gotten, you're kind of knees deep in Nintendo here, you got a couple games under your belt. If Nintendo came to you and said, "Joe, we like you and we want to keep you around for a while. Your role is safe as Daruk and Inobo as long as we want to put these characters in games. But we want to know what character in all of our lines of games, if we could let you voice that character, who would it
be?" You got very close earlier, but I would say Wario.
Oh, yeah.
I love Wario. He is my main in Smash.
That's awesome.
Love the character. He is so rough around the edges. He is anti-Mario. He is the antithesis of Mario in every conceivable way, and he's just so unlike most every Nintendo character that you will see, and that's one of the things that I love about him.
Wow.
I mean, he's evil, and I love it. It just
His games are
gosh,
so underrated.
yeah,
And I'm not talking about like the puzzle games. I'm talking about the platformers, the Wario Land series.
uh-huh,
I've played all of them. They're all terrific. The one on the Wii is called Shake It, and it's a completely hand-drawn 2D
yes,
platformer. If any of you have never played that game, I highly recommend going to your local video game store, GameStop, eBay, wherever you can find that game, and play it because it is low key one of the best games on the Wii. I think it's a series, and since then we haven't had a new Wario 2D platformer since. We've had a lot of those
no,
WarioWare games, and those are fun too.
yes,
And of course, Wario's always in the party games and the
yeah, the
sports
tennis
games.
games, the whatever you name
Yeah,
it.
I really hope that at some point Nintendo's be like, "Hey, let's make another Wario Land game." Those are really
They
great.
I mean, there's that's a license to print money if there ever was one. I mean,
Oh,
Mario is an untapped resource as far as I'm concerned. They've got a fan in me. Let me tell you, man. For the rest of my days, I love Wario.
I love that. I always like it when I find another Wario fan. I've always said it's Nintendo's most underrated series.
Yeah.
It does not get enough love. I remember playing the first Wario game, which was Super Mario Land 3. On the
I was on the NES, or not the NES. It was the Game Boy, wasn't it?
I think it was the original Game Boy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the original Game Boy. My brother had that, and I remember playing. Yeah.
Around the time that we did our first interview, I was still cleaning out my mom and dad's old house, and I actually found my original Game Boy, and I have it displayed in the game room. And gosh, just the nostalgia of the original Game Boys. 1988 was such a different world.
They don't make them like that anymore.
Thank
Gosh.
God. I love the Game Boy, but thank God they don't make them like that anymore. I don't think anybody wants to play video games with lime green as the one color.
But for and it's tough because the Genesis, or the not the Genesis, but what was the handheld Sega, the
Game Gear.
Game Gear came out roughly about the same time, and that was the competition and all that. And it was great because it would have the backlit screen and it had the color, and it was all that. But the problem with the Game Gear was that it had you needed to have 6 AA batteries, or
like 600 AA batteries.
Yeah. And the thing is that the only damn thing, the thing you'd play the Game Gear, and it would only last for 30 minutes. It went through battery like tissues.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your Game Boy lasted.
That Game Boy lasted road trips, man.
You got your money's worth out of that Game Boy.
Yeah, you did.
So, come on.
It's like they probably could have amped up the graphics.
Yeah.
Made them look like the Super Nintendo or something like that. But the trade-off would have been your mom and dad would have been buying batteries until they juiced out the account.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we never had a Game Gear, but my youngest brother Shane, one of his friends from school let him borrow his for like a weekend. Mm-hmm. And I remember picking it up. It's like, hey, mind if I play this for a few minutes? He's like, yeah, but you're probably not going to like it. And I'm like, well, let's see. I picked it up and I started playing Sonic, and like 10 minutes later, like the battery died, and I'm like, oh, well, you should have told me the batteries need changed. It's like, yeah, I just put those batteries in here like 20 minutes ago. And I'm like, oh, it's that kind of bad. Yeah. No wonder we haven't bought one of these. Mom knew better. Mom was a gamer too. She knew better. Mom was beating some of those old Mario games before we were. She was good, man. Oh yeah, man. I tell you what, though, you are awesome. I'm glad you got to come back and talk to us again about Hyrule Warriors and Nintendo.
Anytime.
You're a class act. You're a good friend. I enjoy our wrestling and baseball conversations. if any of you guys want to interact with Joe, you can join us on Facebook. The Legend of Zelda Hub group. You can follow him on Twitter. We'll put links to Joe's Twitter on, in the description. Joe, thanks again for stopping by, buddy.
Yeah. Anytime, man. Always happy to come on and talk anything and everything.
Yeah, we may have you down the road. We don't know what's going to happen with Breath of the Wild 2. I'm imagining you all don't even know what's happening with Breath of the Wild 2 yet. In a COVID world, we don't know exactly what Nintendo has on hold right now or what they're planning to do. We don't even know if there'll be voice acting in Breath of the Wild 2 yet. Yeah. We've only seen...
Just wait and see and enjoy the surprises when they come out. That's it. Yeah. That's all I got to say.
You say 2021 is looking bright. Yeah. Keep your eyes on the internet. Keep your eyes on here on the Zelda Hub. We report any and all news that we get. Any kind of rumor, as long as it has some substantiality to it, we will post it up. But yeah, for now, everybody, on behalf of Joe, thanks again, man. Everybody else at home, thank you for listening. This podcast is not what it is without each and every one of you listening to us ramble on and on. So everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day.